Okay, now don't tell me the answer, but hands up if you got an answer for this. Hands up, hands up. Hands up straight, 1C. Evaluate that definite integral. 1C, hands up, hands up. Now if you have an answer, you'll be confident of your answer. Like you'll know it's right, okay? If you're like, I don't think I really have an answer, you probably don't have the answer, okay? So let's have a look at the question and why is it so confusing, okay? So you've got this. Now, as I walked around, this is quite amusing. I looked. This is what I was picking up your pieces of paper for. Some of you, if you had a book, I couldn't do it. I'd look, and you write down this, and then some of you have written down, this, and then let's go on to question D, guys. What do you do with it? Now, what's the problem? What's the problem? The problem is that that's not a function that we're familiar with. We don't know what the primitive is. It's not a standard form. It's not on the table standard integrals, which I didn't give you, but even an idea would not help you with this question. Okay, and to perplex you even more, it's worth 1 mark. You're like, what kind of black magic kind of a technique gets this in 1 mark? Okay, so it's simple in some way, but if you didn't get an answer, you didn't work out what the way was. Okay? So knowing that you don't know the primitive of this. Okay? And you should be confident enough to say, sine cubed, what is that? How am I supposed to know what that is? You're not, okay? So therefore, this simple method must have to do with something that doesn't have to do with the primitive, okay? Now, what kind of question is this? This is a definite integral, right? So really, in disguise, even though they don't word it this way, it's a question about an area of some kind. Oh, snap. And the question is, what kind of area is it, right? Now, it is a simple area, but you can't just write down the answer, even though it is on 1 marker, okay? How would we explain?
This is ridiculous.
How would we explain that the answer is in fact
This function is an odd function.
So, let's give this a go. Now, to justify why this is, okay, you might have, because it was just 1 mark, you might have been able to get away with just saying that. But if it was 2, you'd need to provide some reasoning for why, okay? So how would you do it, okay? Yeah?
But it doesn't say it's an area.
It doesn't need to, okay? The reason why is because, see, this is what it's testing. Do you understand that what an integral, a definite integral, really is? It really is an area, okay? So this is trying to, I hate the phrase because it's very misogynist, but it's trying to sort out the men from the boys. The people who are just like, oh yeah, I know, I do the mechanical process, and those are the people who write down and then like, oh, I don't know what to do, okay? So how am I going to justify it? Okay, well how do we normally prove that functions are odd?
F of minus x.
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to need to say, let's call this something, okay? Okay, so let's call that f, right? Now if it's an odd function, what I'm expecting is, what is the characteristic of an odd function?
Can I ask you a question?
F of minus x.
If it was an area, that means you have to absolute it, but if they give you that, doesn't it just cancel out?
Don't assume you have to, I've always said, be careful with absolute values, right? I've always said be careful. You can't just throw them in willy-nilly, okay? Now it's an area, but it hasn't said, find the area of, which means that this will give you a negative, right? Or is it positive? I haven't checked, but it's going to give you opposites either way, okay? So how do I justify that it's odd? If that's f of x, then I want to work out what f of minus x is, right? So let's substitute. This is minus x squared sine cubed of minus x, right? Well, minus x all squared, the negatives cancel. And then what do you get here? Well, sine is an odd function, right? So that's why this is going to have a minus sign. There's actually 3 minus signs in there because it's cubed, right? So minus 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 leaves you with 1. Okay, so minus x squared sine cubed, and that is our definition of an odd function. Okay, because this is equal to that. Yeah.
I didn't prove it was odd, I just stated it.
Yeah, so I reckon for 1 mark you probably got away with it, okay? But they could just as easily have made this a 2-mark question, and then you'd expect it to do something like this. And then here you'd either say as x squared sine cubed x is odd, or you could alternatively you could say by symmetry, because odd means symmetry.